Yo, what's up? Alrighty, so spent a little bit of time going at it, and I figured, okay, we did the Avalanche one. You got the Shinra side already. Let's go ahead and make that deck playable as well. So, right here we have the stock Avalanche versus Shinra starter deck. And I'll be honest, if you actually put just the starter decks against each other, this will beat the Avalanche starter deck almost every time. It is unbelievable how good these cards are compared to the Avalanche cards if the Avalanche cards don't have access to Barrett or Tifa. However, they've failed to make a big splash in Constructed, so I will say this is not going to be Tier 1 because I don't think I can solve Turks to the point where they are Tier 1. If you gave me an unlimited budget, I still don't think I can make Turks Tier 1 just because they're close, but they're not quite there. They're just missing a couple of things. So let's take a look at what the starter deck gives us, and we're going to kind of start from there. So you can see right away, this is from before the release of Sustained Legendary Turk. So we're a little stretched for Turk names. We have 2 extra copies of Rooted Reno that aren't the starter deck cards, just to fill out names to make sure that Sang will hit a little more often. We have, of course, our playset of our starter cards. And then they went with they decided to go with the Remnant package, with the 3 Kadaj, 2 Laws, 2 Yazoo line. And then this backup lineup is just straight up terrible. Yeah, you have no reason to play any of these cards. So, we definitely can revamp that. And this is going to be the one where I'm going to make a pretty bold choice. There's not enough reasons to play Ice Lightning Turks. And a lot of the best payoffs in Ice Lightning. Oh, that's a minor spoiler. Ignore that. You guys saw nothing. We go here. We go market high to low. If you can't play Alcid, do not play Ice Lightning. This is clearly out of our budget. Okay, so we don't really have the payoff for going Ice Lightning. Rufus is a good beat stick, but if we're not playing this Rufus, then we shouldn't be in Ice, especially because the other Ice Turk is Legendary Turk, which is a 2k vanilla almost every time, right? So we have a 2k vanilla because you really can't afford to go for Turk counters given just how expensive this effect is and what should be a very fast aggressive deck. So what do we do instead? Well, I like the Kadaj Yazoo Laws package, but it's a little too cute, a little too slow. We're gonna unbind all of the ice cards from this list. Here we go. We are going Wind Lightning. Now, don't click away. Don't click away. Are you ready to see the 4th best Turk in the game? It's Bart's. This was true way back with one of my favorite pet cards. I first found out about this style of deck way back when people were using this to kind of cheat with dancers. But you could play this Bart's, and Bart's can kind of become a haste first strike dancer, and you can do this in Turks, and you have a Wind Turk. We don't need to play this one anymore. We've got a much better one in this Bart's. This Bart's becomes an immune to targeting Turk, which is really crazy because if you have a Root on field, he starts getting really big, and if you have a Reno on field, he starts getting bigger, and he gets Brave First Strike. So you end up with this massive, untargetable Bungus with Brave First Strike as long as your opponent's on one color, or you can call the right color from your opponent. Like say your opponent's on Earth Fire, you declare Fire, and probably they're not going to be able to remove it very easily. So that is actually one of the best Turks. The only downside to him as a Turk is he doesn't have the job Turk in hand, but that's fine. We still have, if you play a Seng, 12 other Turks we can cheat in off of Seng to start getting us to that critical mass of Turks. We're gonna go for one light card in this deck. We're gonna pick up the Starter Aerith from Opus 11. This is about a $1 card. She just gets back 2 Category 7 characters. She's Recursion for Seng, is her main goal. But also, if she gets Seng plus, say, Rude or Reno, you're guaranteed to have a Seng hit, which is great. That's exactly where you want to be. There is one small downside to going Mono Lightning, and that is... this card has never gotten a reprint yet. So as of right now, the Rufus you would want to play is not in this list. If you can wait a month for this, the multiplayer boss deck, this is, first of all, boss fight is really fun to play with friends at locals. You should totally pick this up, or someone in your group should. And this has an announced reprint for this Rufus. But until then, it's a $10 card out of the price range, and it's not mission critical the way Barrett and Tifa were. You can play without it. All right, so let's do the card by card. First off, our Turks: three copies of Lena, 3 copies of Cisne, 3 copies of Rude, 3 copies of Reno, 3 copies of Seng, and our honorary Turk, 2 copies of Bartz. These are, I think, relatively self-explanatory. We need a critical mass of Turks to make sure Seng hits. When Seng hits, he is one of the most powerful cards in the game. We have, running out the rest of the forwards, we have 2 copies of Kunshira. Kunshira is kind of nice in this list. You almost never have 4 backups, like you shouldn't. Usually you want to get to 2 or 3, depending on if you're going for a lightning null every turn or not. So Kunshira pretty often is just a 2 CP 9k with haste, good for just kind of getting in damage. And we need enough wind cards to really make sure the wind half of this deck actually does function. 3 copies of Kelger. This functions as both a card that kind of matches what the Turks do. He's a haste, brave, first strike, beat stick if your opponent's not actively putting out big guys, and if your opponent is putting out big guys, this is cheap removal for your opponent's big guys. I don't love this card, but I think it has a good home with this type of list. This is definitely one of the cards you could consider cutting for the Rufuses if you actually were willing to spend on them. Lastly, the reason to be in Wind Lightning, Null. So kind of funny, we're putting in both legends from last set in here. Null is an exceptionally powerful card starting at damage 3. However, Wind Lightning is uniquely positioned to take advantage of Null because there is a lightning backup that can give a category 13 forward haste. So you can continuously give this Null haste, and this Null with haste is one of the most demonic cards in the game. It is such a pain in the butt to deal with, and your opponent's going to do just about anything they can to get rid of this card. You are sinking 1 CP every turn into the Null, but if Null, if you could pay 1 to give Null haste before damage 3, you would do it in a heartbeat. And that's the forward lineup. A lot of your deck space is going to be taken up by the Turks, but when you kind of assemble Exodia, it's a really fun feeling. It feels really strong. As far as summons, I wanted to go for kind of cheap removal while trying to kind of pad out, again, the wind cards, because if you're looking at our wind, we're down to only 20 wind cards. 3 copies of Chocobo. It's good EX. Helps us dig for... we really want to find our President Shinra. So it's just kind of nice. 2 copies of Diabolos. This is one of the cheapest removal summons that I could find that I thought really worked well. We don't want to spend 4 on an Alexander. Chocomog, we're not going to have enough characters for a lot of the time to break little things. We're not going to have the draw off of it. It really made sense to try to look for kind of a side route, if you will. Diabolos isn't going to work in every matchup, but it'll do the job often enough. 2 copies of the new Rama and 1 copy of the old Rama. These again are just kind of ways of dealing with cheap bodies. Rama gets rid of anything that costs 3 or less for the most part. This Rama has the unique ability to kill both Arosa and Atomos, and because of that, it is good enough to be in the deck. 2 copies of Thunder Drake. These are cheap things that break things that also give you points of damage. More than enough in a deck like this, especially because you can have these set off to the side. When you assemble Exodia and you dull your opponent's entire field with Rude, you can swing these Thunder Drakes in to increase your damage and win the game on the spot. Lastly, 1 copy of Melusine. Again, you're just trying to get things out of the way so you can swing. She's also very obnoxious to actually kill. She's a 2 CP 7k. And then we had to rework our backups entirely to kind of match the Wind Lightning. So first off, we're keeping the 3 President Shinra. You need at least 1 President of Shinra in the deck in order to turn on the additional buffs. You really want this so you can get the Rude and Reno to give the Bart's haste, or Brave First Strike. 1 copy of Lumina. This helps us find one of our 3 nulls. 3 copies of Lightning so we can get the Lightning Null package online more often. And lastly, we have 2 copies of Zuji. This will let you search for a Category 7 forward, but it's also just a 2 CP backup. I like using this to find Aerith in the late game. So you can crack the Zuji, get your Aerith, play your Aerith, get back your Sang and your Reno, play your Sang, play your Reno, or whatever Turk you're missing, and kind of pop off from there. It kind of helps just kind of bring the whole deck together in a way to have just 1 extra search. And we need a Wind backup engine. We're going to go with the easy one, which is 3 copies of Nordstalin. Thank God this was in the anniversary box. To be cheap makes all of these decks so much easier to build. 1 copy of Yuke. And we've skimped on the Crystal Chronicles package a little bit. And this card is expensive. You can replace this with Waltrill if you don't want to spend $8 on an Althea for a deck that's only okay. But if you can, Althea protecting your Sang to be able to replay your Sang later is really good. One thing that was very funny one time is I was playing against a friend and they tried to kill my Sang on entry before he could get buffs from like the Rude and Reno that were going to come in. And you can bounce the Sang with the Althea, and Sang can actually play himself. There is no restriction on that, so I ended up just being able to replay Sang, and Sang resolved, kind of dodged the removal. She's just so good, and she's just cheap enough where I feel okay putting her in here. But if you want to save the $8, 1 copy of Waltrill to help you dig for President Shinra will do just about as good for the price. So, as always, here is the TCG Player shopping cart. I've got a couple of proxies in here to kind of match, because I do think Bart's will be probably 75 cents to $1 once the set fully drops. You see, I've got it estimated at being almost exactly $50 after shipping. $25 worth of singles after the structure deck. It's not bad. I don't think this would be as good as the Guardians or Retainer package. It's a little bit more expensive. But if you are building the Avalanche side of the deck, you're really only spending $35, at which point it's pretty hard to argue that like getting 2 decks that are decently good. And actually, I think they'd have an interesting matchup against each other because of the way that the Turks are able to stay active. And yeah, you have yourself a pretty decent little budget deck. As always, I will have the deck list in the description. And if you have any requests, I think I can do this at least one more time for the Captain's package. I don't think I can do one for the FF4 starter deck. I'm sorry if you really want to see that. And I do think I can look at making Soiree. Soiree is a very, very strong deck that also happens to be extremely cheap. So let me know what you guys think, or I can also move on to starting to do some deck lists for decks from the new set. Things I'm really excited about for that includes Riku multi-element deck that I think is really, really sick. Thanks for watching, everybody.